Mr. Wood, can you confirm that the Kansas Open Meetings regulations and notifications were met?
Yes.
So I would like to call this meeting to order March 1st, 2023 at 4 o'clock, and then we'll have the roll call.
Okay, Deborah Shetler,
Here.
Todd Hadnot,
Here.
Aaron Melby,
Here.
Tina Behringer,
Here.
Chelsea Copeland,
Here.
and Teresa Hernandez. Here. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, Teresa, if you want to
Here.
take over. So we have just called the meeting to order and then done roll call, so.
I'll do this part.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so everyone had the minutes from the last meeting of December 7th, 2022 in your packet. So is there a motion to accept these minutes as written?
I make a motion to accept the minutes as written.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion to accept the minutes.
Is there any discussion?
Call for the vote.
So we'll call for the vote to accept the minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Okay.
All right.
Minutes pass.
Go ahead.
Okay, so this portion would be the citizens forum. Would be the opportunity for anybody from the public to speak if they would like to. Looks like we have one member in our audience today, so yeah. Do you want to?
How are you doing? And thank you for Richard Humphrey, Sonic, Kansas. Moving forward with great things, we'd like to thank you for the work you're doing, everything like that. It's not easy work. But what we were speaking about is just our great, we're stoked about the resolution 22893, and that's the mental health collaboration. We really do appreciate you guys reaching out for that. There's a lot of questions about misconduct, but I do believe with the checks and balances there's going to be some great opportunities for us to advance as far as engagement with the community. And the other thing that I'm not prepared for, we'll speak about another time. And again, we do appreciate you guys bringing the Central Kansas mental health into action with you guys. It's a great deal. Thank you.
And we will actually have some more information about that in the coming months. I know that's a topic that we've talked about as the board. That program is just kind of in its infancy, and I think they're in the process of trying to get people hired and on board. And as soon as they're on board and kind of get through the training, we'll have them in here to present to the board just kind of how things are going. So that'll probably won't be next meeting, and probably be the meeting after that. I would think they'll be up and established and have everything moving forward. But as soon as we feel like there's enough information to share with the board, we'll get them in here. So.
Yes, my current information is that they just are about to onboard two, and so that will, going through the process and then going through the background checks on our side, and then so yeah, we're very much looking forward to getting that up and running and seeing how we'll integrate with us and to best serve our citizens.
Is it appropriate to go ahead and? Well, no, that's part of new business. The CIT is part of the new business, is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, so I'll wait until that order of items in order to further ask some questions about that. Okay. So, thank you, sir, for standing up and expressing your approval of these new developments with mental health and policing. The next item on the agenda is the staff report, introduction of Chief Wise.
Yeah, so I'll just go real quick. Chief Wise he was a longtime member of the Edmond Police Department in Oklahoma. He's got a broad base of experience in all sorts of policing, from being on the street, doing traffic, investigations, kind of a broad range there, administrative things. I'll let him, go into a little bit more detail about himself, but we're happy to have him on board. He's been on for, 3 weeks now? So
Almost a month.
almost a month. So time flies when you're having fun. But we're happy to have him aboard. I think he's a great fit for our community and for our police department. So far, everything just seems to be going really well, and we look forward to a long tenure with the department and moving us in the right direction. So you can go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself if you want to, Chief.
Yeah, just a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Tecumseh, Oklahoma, which is a small town of about 6,300 people. And to kind of fast forward how I got here, so I played football, and I went on a recruiting trip to Kansas Wesleyan. They were wanting me to play football and look at them. And so I came here, and at the time I was interested in going into sports medicine. I wanted to be an athletic trainer. And so the very first thing when I stepped on campus, they put me in contact with one of their program directors, and they asked me how strong I was and my science and everything. I was like, well, I'm fair, And so he was very blunt, and he said, you need to look for a different line of work. And so it was here in Salina, Kansas in 1994 that I decided to go into law enforcement. And so that brief interaction, when this job came open, it stuck out to me. And so it's, I tell everybody, it was a God thing that I feel like me and my family is led here, and we're excited. And, your board is a part of the reason too why I selected Salina, because to me that's very forward thinking for a city and a police department to have a board like this, and to have a board that actually has some say in your review and everything. I think it's forward thinking that a lot of law enforcement agencies don't necessarily do. They do it in some form or fashion, but it's kind of maybe a watered down fashion. So when I learned about that, even during the interview process, and I understand, the city put a lot of care into developing this board, but it was one of the things that really impressed me with this city. So I thank you for the work you do, and I look forward to working with y'all in the future.
It's very nice to have you on board, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
All right, so the next part of staff report is just we're kind of trying to develop some paperwork or some reports that we can just put in here every month so you can see them and you can see how things progress. And so there's just a couple of items here. I'm not going to go over it in detail, but we just wanted to kind of, show you the use of force stuff, show you the number of calls for service, the complaints that we received over time. And then at one point there was a question about the makeup of our police department as far as ethnicity and sex, and so we just wanted to provide that, and we'll provide that on a quarterly basis as part of just our ongoing reports. So if there's any questions about any of that information, these guys would be happy to answer that. I'm not going to, but I don't have anything else as far as that goes, unless you do. So.
I do have one. This is on. I do have one question, and regarding the Hispanic community, approximately how many officers speak Spanish?
I believe I think we have 7 Hispanic descent officers right now, and I believe it's 6 of those speak Spanish.
Okay, thank you.
We're slowly growing. So.
Okay. That's all.
Okay, if there's not any other questions, I think we can move on to the next item there, which is there's a PowerPoint presentation we'll just go through here. This is our annual report. We had our first annual report last year, so this is the second iteration of this. If you want to, Chief, just go ahead, or whoever's going to do it. Go through the presentation. There's a kind of a more detailed report that's in the packet. If you have questions about that, we'd be happy to answer those. But it just kind of talks about what the board's done, the cases they reviewed, the decisions that have come back, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, the first is it goes over the history, and I think y'all are well aware of that. And then next slide. It goes into the board members. Next slide. And it goes into the board activity, and it's kind of, I think the packet y'all got, it kind of summarizes that, where, you know, there looks like there was 4 cases, 2 of excessive force that was reviewed, and 2 bias-based policing, where one of them was sustained and the others were unfounded. And so that kind of goes into the explanation of that and the dates. Next slide. And then it goes into kind of the additional information that we as a police department provided for you. You know, our taser policy, our license plate readers, the use of the body wrap, and our 30 for 30 initiative. Next slide. And then this kind of goes into a 6-year comparison of calls for service. The green line at top is our total calls, and then the kind of pink line goes into our calls for service, like actually, you know, someone calling in to the police department requesting an officer. And then the blue line goes into the officer-initiated calls. You can see that kind of flat from last year. We've gone down a little bit in that, and some of that could be, you know, based on officer-initiated calls. You know, manpower has been an issue, and so sometimes that can affect that, you know, our officer-initiated calls, which could explain some of that. Next slide. This is our use of force definition, and I think y'all probably have seen this before. And then here's our use of forces. You know, the very top pink line is our total uses. The blue line would be the weaponless, and would be like, you know, using hands-on, that may be taking a suspect to the ground. And then the green line, the lime green, would be the firearm, the display only. Like if I make a traffic stop and say I feel like they're a threat to me, you know, if I pull my weapon and point it at them and, you know, order them out of the car, that's what that is.
Excuse me,
Yes.
right there. That includes tasers?
Yes.
Yes.
I believe so.
Not for the firearms.
Okay.
Okay,
That's just, the green is just firearms.
okay. Thank
So
you.
the taser would fall under just the other use of forces.
Okay, thank you.
And I would too, like the agency I come from, a lot of the stuff that is tracked here in Salina never got tracked there. Like, you know, the pointing of a weapon, the pointing of a taser. And so if you compare, you almost really can't compare to different agencies, because you might look at ours here in Salina and go, wow, that's extremely high. But they're taking into account, even like taking them to the ground, there's not a lot of agencies that I know that count that. You know, as long as the person being arrested wasn't injured, that may not even be recorded. And then the display, you know, the showing of the taser or the firearm is definitely not recorded in a lot of agencies. So that can definitely make our numbers look higher, but we feel that it's very important to track, you know. So, you know, we have, and some of, you know, being CALEA accredited too, that is a aspect of it that helps, you know, track all those aspects. But the standard here in Salina is higher than a lot of agencies, and so, but with that too, sometimes the numbers can look a little off. And so I wanted to point that out, coming from an agency that didn't track this kind of stuff. And yeah, go ahead. Sorry. No, you're fine. And this goes into our custodial arrests, which is, you know, the pink line, and then our uses of forces. And so from 17 to 22, officers arrested 11,881 individuals, and that same time we used force 1,106 times, which calculates to about 9.3% of the time some type of force is being used. Next slide. And then here's our complaints, and you know, it can look like a big spike, but we're really talking about 3 is the high number. So over the, you know, the excessive force is the pink, and then the bias base is the light blue, which of course it goes along with, you know, we had 2 of each for the period that was looked at last year, and that's designated there. And this is just a snapshot of our website, where citizens can go and look at our policies and like accreditation, like review and stuff like that, and look up different things like that. y'all have any questions for me. I know I kind of flew through that, I know, but also I know y'all have lived through all this already, and y'all have been a part of a lot of this, so I didn't really go into a lot of detail on that.
I think I actually have one clarification for myself, but also it could perhaps be helpful for any citizen that might be viewing this. And so when we talked about those two cases, the two with excessive force, that, anyway, I don't remember exactly which one, but some were, one was unfounded and one was sustained. So perhaps if we could explain kind of how it is that we're doing this. So we actually go into executive conference and we review the body camera. We look at how you came to the decisions you made. We find out what kind of other collateral information you had. We look into what it is that you did in that particular event. And then we look into what you have determined in relationship to your staff.
Yes.
And then we provide our feedback to you, and we say, your decision is sustained by us, that we agree that you followed your policies, you followed your procedures, you did whatever. And then the unsubstantiated, is that right? Yeah. Nope. Unfounded.
Well, unfounded is actually the police department's one that indicates that the complaint that was made did not occur. So when you guys are making your decision, you're looking at what our decision was and what the chief's recommendation, and you either agree with it, and I don't remember the exact terminology, but you disagree, or that you think there's some more questions that you would like answered. So the sustained and unfounded is actually our definition per our policy on the way we decide a complaint. So, and then you guys can either agree with us, not agree with us, or have further questions.
Got it. Okay. So the unfounded is unfounded, and is that your language?
That's our language, and that says that the complaint that was made, there is absolutely no evidence. There's actually evidence to say that it did not occur compared to what the complaint was.
Okay. And so we take a look at that, and we provide feedback as to whether or not we agree, given all of the information that we've been given. And I know that myself as a chair, I have been very impressed and assured by the amount of information that you have provided us so that we can give feedback and have some oversight. So I just kind of wanted to do an overview of that process for us as a board. Any other questions or comments? Okay.
Yeah, I think we can.
Can move on to the new business. All right, so without any further comment, I invite us to go on to the new business, the review of the 2022 annual report.
That's actually the presentation we just went through was kind of the overview of that.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so we'd be on the crisis intervention team presentation, so.
Is it the same? I have some paperwork here. Okay.
Yeah, it's not exactly the same as the presentation. The presentation was kind of intended to take the highlights out of the annual report.
Got it.
But if you have any questions or concerns about anything that's in the annual report, we can certainly try to address those.
I just maybe wanted to highlight, again, since this is kind of an annual review, that the task of this board is to review, develop, and recommend policies for law enforcement in relation to the prohibition of racial profiling. So there's a component upon this board that, that really seriously considers issues of race. And other, and may I add, most recently, other biased policing. We also review and recommend training that includes an understanding of historical and cultural systems that perpetuate racial profiling, and it assists in identifying racial profiling practices. And we recommend strategies to inform the public of an individual's right to file a complaint and of the procedural process. So to me, it's this double responsibility, if you would, of both overseeing the excessive force and also biases within the police department, and then another one where we are bridges to the community in relationship to how to file a complaint, how to make sure that the services of the police within the community, that there's a bridge between the community and the police. So that's kind of what I was pulling from the overall summary. Okay, Crisis Intervention Team, also known as the CIT, training overview.
Officer Venables, I think you're up.
Hello, thank you for having me here today. My name is Chris Venables. I've been with the Salina Police Department for a little over 17 years. Before coming here, I worked for the Houston, Texas Police Department for a little under 8 years. So about 25 years in my career at this point. Last year or 2 years ago, I had an interest in dealing with mental health in the CIT program. We had another officer, actually maybe it's been 3 years, there was another officer that was working on CIT that left the department. So then I looked into assisting with getting that program back in line with running her for the department. The CIT program, and I think you guys had a paper that Lieutenant Feldman gave you, talks about the CIT Memphis model, which was started in 1988 is when CIT really came about or started, and that started in Memphis. I didn't get involved, well, I got involved in CIT originally about 1999. The Houston Police Department was big into starting the CIT program then, so I was aware of it then and did some training with it then. But hadn't really done much with it since I had left Houston and came to Salina. Basically, at this point in our CIT program, we have a board that meets, and we've set goals as into what we want CIT to look like or how we can help the community. And really, CIT is a collaboration between law enforcement, the mental health facilities like Central Kansas Mental Health, the hospital, CKF for the addiction treatment, because a lot of mental health and addiction things go hand in hand with a lot of issues. So I went to the coordinator class, or they called it a train the trainer class, to help put on a training class, a 40-hour training class that usually our officers would go elsewhere to take. So at this point, we're trying to get our own class scheduled, which we're hoping for May of June of this year, where we have different instructors from the mental health community, Central Kansas Mental Health. We have a few judges or other people that come in for the legal part of the classes. And basically it's to help the community and people that suffer from mental health and addiction disorders, that if we can, to help them from getting within the criminal justice system. Sometimes that's unavoidable depending on what occurs, but sometimes a lot of issues that we have is usually because of a mental health issue. And that's why we want officers to be trained in that and how to deal with people with mental health. Because most of the people we deal with that have mental health issues, and they call it crisis intervention because, that's the worst day of their life to them right then and what we're seeing. And it could be a crisis where they've lost a loved one or they suffer from mental health disorders and they haven't been taking medications or other issues. So we usually try to send a CIT officer to talk to those people because they've been trained. I mean, we're not clinicians. Smarter people than us have taught us how to kind of recognize situations and certain acts of people to just, I don't want to say decipher like schizophrenia or bipolar. I mean, I can't tell you that all the difference between those, but you can usually tell that someone's having an episode of a mental health issue, and sometimes related in with drugs also. I don't have our percentages, and I probably could have looked into dispatch more, but we're trying to track now calls that are mental health calls, as into how many, and we started doing this several months ago, maybe 6 months ago. Captain Forster, who as administrative captain kind of oversees me and working with CIT about how many type of mental health calls we deal with a year or monthly. And a lot of ours are, I can say from a patrol standpoint with me, just I couldn't tell you the numbers offhand, but I can tell you that at least I hear, at least when I'm at work, or go to 2, maybe 3, not every day, but sometimes every day. There's a call dealing with someone that's in a crisis or mental health. And we do have a lot of situations where it's sometimes the same people that we've assisted or tried to assist. And sometimes people don't always take the assistance we try to give them, or they do really well for a little while. And then we're back to the same thing trying to, but we try to link people up with different organizations, Central Kansas Mental Health, Central Kansas Foundation, different things to help those people, manage their lives and do better. And then that also cuts back on the police dealing with them once we have collaboration or help from other agencies, because we may get call about someone talking to themselves on the side corner of the street or yelling, which isn't necessarily a criminal issue, but as law enforcement, we're not only supposed to deal with criminal law, we also have the duty of health and welfare of people if they're a danger to themselves or a danger to others. Sometimes people talking to themselves, it's obviously not a danger to us or themselves. Now, if they run out in the middle of the street and they're screaming and yelling, then they're a danger to themselves and motorists. I think we've had some pretty good luck with some of the people that we continue to deal with. I know there are certain subjects that I've dealt with or I've been asked to at least, or if I see we keep dealing with the same person, I usually see if there's something I can do to intervene in that, and maybe getting them services so patrol or the police aren't getting called, 15 times in a 3-day period to deal with the same person who's paranoid or thinks the government's watching them, or their cat's talking to them, or different things. And we've had good success, I know, with several of our people that have got them into taking them to the hospital for evaluations. They do a medical screen at the hospital, and then once they're medically cleared, Central Kansas Mental Health, or there's another besides
Viridian?
Central.
Like Viridian?
There's another one that does it, but there's another Zoom one that mental health people that talk to the subjects also.
Okay.
For screening, and then sometimes those ends up in where people go to Larned State Hospital if they're deemed that they need that. And then they come back, and we have cases where that works really well, and we don't get calls about them or from them having issues because they've gotten some assistance. They've been hooked up with people here in the community or Central Kansas Mental Health, and they followed through with their appointments and other stuff like that. So the goal is, though, of CIT basically is to, to assist mental health and people substance abuses, get the help they need. Kansas is pretty limited on services for that. There's waiting lists for Larned and other places because there's just a lot of people that need that assistance. It's not illegal to have mental health problems. So sometimes people were called for things that we can't necessarily do anything about. But if you see somebody screaming and yelling on the side of the road, then obviously people are going to call us and say, hey, can you go check that person, see if they're okay? And sometimes we can get them the help they need, and sometimes not so much. So But we plan, like I said, we plan on doing the training for more officers once we get that set up. They talked about the co-responder program is what we're trying to work on right now. And as they talked about, there'll be more information later with that, but they do have several people that have applied and that they're looking at. And the goal, once that occurs, is that clinicians will go to calls with us when needed. I don't believe they'll be going to calls on their own, but with an officer, I don't know if it'll be me or other officers, to assist us, that can do evaluations and say, hey, this person definitely needs to go to the hospital, with more, and they can do actual evaluations where that kind of bypasses that second person that we have to get at the hospital, because these clinicians can actually do the evaluations. So we'll still get them medically cleared, but it's be a shorter time frame probably too with the co-responders is what we're hoping also, to streamline the process to be a little faster also. I think that's it. If you guys have any questions on how we...
I actually used to be one of those mental health professionals in the hospital that would do the assessments in determining whether a person should go to Larned State Hospital. And so one of the things that I am particularly interested in is making sure that in the CIT response, that there's actually a licensed clinical level clinician who is doing that. And so I don't know if in the Memphis model, you may have like a case manager level, perhaps a master's level, but not a clinical experienced person who's making those kinds of decisions. And so that's really what my main concern is that you get some top-level clinicians that are working with you. And I would imagine that that's part of the mental health center's responsibility. But it is difficult to know if this is a schizophrenic break, if it's drug-induced paranoia, or all kinds of different things. And the degree of danger when somebody is out of their mind, the degree of danger is higher because they don't have any breaks. So making sure that clinical level professional is a part of the team, I think, is just really, really important. So I just wanted to say that.
And that's the goal of it. And as you said, they are supposed to be able to be clinicians that are able to do those assessments and the other stuff like that, not just case manager type people.
Okay. I'm really glad that Salina is doing this. Thank you. Any other questions, comments on the crisis intervention team training overview? Okay. So moving on to other business. Thank you, Officer Venables.
Yeah, I just have one thing. I just say if there's any kind of policy or anything specific that we kind of just go through and pick the stuff that we think that you might want to hear. If there is anything specific that you as a board want us to bring back and present a specific topic, we'd be happy to do that. We just need you to let us know. So you're welcome to email me or email Chief Weiss and just say, hey, this is a topic that I'm interested. I'd like to know more information about it, and we'll be happy to provide that to you. I know sometimes these board, if we have a case, you're here for 2 hours dealing with a case. You don't have time to do that. If we don't have a case, then we gotta do something else with our time and want to be productive. If you're going to be here, we want to be productive. So anything that you have that you want to review, just let us know. I don't have to know right now, but if there's something that comes up and you think about it between now and the next meeting, we'd be happy to provide any information that we can.
Other business? I actually have been considering a bit about the this board, and kind of the annual review got me thinking. We are now going on 2 years. Our next session would be that this board has been in active for 2 years, and one of the aspects of the board in dealing with race. I know that those conversations are really difficult to have, and given our race difficulties, I would say nationwide, I want to kind of be able to bring this up with us here and acknowledge that I think that it's going to be beneficial to both the police and the community if we as a board can make sure that we attend also to the aspect of being bridges between law enforcement and minority communities. That was one of the reasons why I asked about how many bilingual officers that there are. I am an advocate within the Hispanic community. It is really, really difficult to be able to get information if a person doesn't speak the language. And not only just speaking the language, but the misunderstanding that happens. Oh, they arrested my son because of such and such. I mean, that's racial. My son wasn't doing anything, and yet perhaps there was a communication barrier. So I think that the importance, I'm feeling, let me say that, I am feeling that it's important for me to work specifically on being the bridge to the community, and that the community knows that that I am actively working on their behalf. I'm wondering if we could all have a kind of a consideration, sometimes have a consideration of how we can each take that responsibility pretty seriously in having contact and connection with our respective communities. And when it comes to a complaint on racial bias, what kind of legitimacy we have as a board for our communities, our minority communities. This is really tough stuff. This is loaded stuff. And in a place like Salina, where we're dominantly Anglo, it's really hard to talk about. So my main point here is, as we move forward as a board, how can each of us have, or maybe even just demonstrate, ways that we are being the bridge between the community and the police? Sometimes I think that up to now we've been kind of like monitoring the police, kind of like holding the police department accountable, which I believe is really important. Sometimes I feel like it's really easy for me to show up every 3 months and say, okay, what have you got for me? What are you feeding me? And I'm going to hold you accountable, but then how am I accountable? And I would like to ask us as a board to consider, how are we accountable to our community in being able to bridge the mistrust that, at least nationwide, is really difficult in these days. I don't know if anybody has any questions or counterpoints to that.
You know, I agree with you as far as the conversation's hard to have sometimes, but we got to have it, you know. The way I look at it is, will we fix racism in my lifetime? No, but is it worth it to us to do our best, hopefully for my kids? And I am not afraid of those tough conversations, and I welcome them. And so as y'all reach out to your different communities, let's set up a meeting, let's sit and talk. I don't have all the answers, but I will definitely sit and, you know, I value your opinion, and let's talk about it. Let's see, tell us what we can do better, you know. And some of it may be a misunderstanding. Well, when this happens, we feel like it was race-based, where in all reality, well, no, it's a procedural. We do this, you know. Be happy to, you know, that, you know, it was 2020 that really changed the way I look at policing, you know, because I was fortunate enough when, you know, everything that went on in the country, the way my office was situated in my last department, people were coming in and they just wanted to talk to the police, you know, a lot of minority families. And so I was very fortunate and blessed to be where, you know, they would call, they wanted to talk to a supervisor, and that call got punted to everybody. The chief didn't want to talk to him. And so I was fortunate that I go, yeah, I'll talk to anybody. You know, as long as we both have open minds, we can get through a lot. And a lot of it is people sat down, they go, I fear you. And I said, okay, why? And I got to give my wife credit. One of the things she has always told me is, I won't be mad at you for the way you feel. And so I took that belief into these conversations where I'm not going to be mad at you. I'm not going to go, well, I've never dealt with you, so you can't say that. You're lumping me into everybody else. And sometimes it was those conversations where they had an interaction with a whole nother police department, but, you know, they lumped us in, and, you know, that's okay, because the way I've always broken it down to officers to help try to make them understand is, like, if I grew up in the Smith family across the street, somebody in that family did something to me, well, as these generations, I'm not going to tell my kids and raise them, go, hey, go play at the Smith family, until there's been something fixed, you know. And so I break it down like that, and officers go, okay, I can kind of see that. I go, so don't get mad if someone's fearful of you because of a police interaction that happened in another state. Let's sit down and go, what can we do better? And some of that is, and that's where it's made me very passionate about community engagement. Whether it's doing stuff in the community to show the more human side, but it's a two-way street where, you know, you get more comfortable with us, but us as officers, we get more comfortable with those we serve, you know. And so the days of us being stoic robots are over. We've got to show that we've got some humanity to us and that we're humans, because we are. We're as flawed as anybody. But also, you know, when we walk into a restaurant or room, you shouldn't, you know, go, oh gosh, it's the police. You should go, hey, that's CJ. I know CJ, you know, and that's my goal. And especially with the size that we are here in Salina, we should be able to make those connections. So please feel free. I will come and sit and talk to anybody, and let's sit and talk these out as best we can. And hopefully, you know, like I said, we start on the right path to where our kids and grandkids, this is a better, and hopefully, you know, grandiose thinking, we can fix this, you know. But it's got to start somewhere, and to just fold our hands and go, well, it's just always been like this, it's not fair to our kids. And so I'm 100% on board with, you know, let's meet, let's talk, and let's see what we can do better.
And I think as a board, I mean, I don't want us to get off track, and I mean, we're here to look at some of the racial things, but I don't want that to be our focus. I mean, I spend my time coming here because if there's a complaint made, the police department shares that with us. And I think as a board, it's our job to somewhat monitor the police department to make sure that they're doing the right thing. And then we as a board can leave here not given details, but, you know, when we see people or hear conversations, we can say, you know, no, that was handled correctly, knowing that me as a black person looked at a case that another black person may have filed and know that they was treated fairly in it. And so I don't want us to get too sidetracked on, you know, the race thing, I guess. So, but it's important. I mean, that's why I'm here, is I want to make sure that being a black person that we're represented. So.
I'm not going to add a whole lot. I think CJ's right on, and actually that's part of the reason that he's here today is because of his openness and willingness to get out and do those things. In the past, kind of before COVID, we did have a lot of community events where the police department was involved and we invited people. We haven't done that because of COVID. I think there are plans to bring some of those things back in the future, and that may be an opportunity to say, here's the board, we'll invite you, you can come and be part of those events as well. So I think that's something to note as we move forward planning some of those, I know we do things like fishing with a cop and some of those other events, and we had hot dogs with the police officers in the park or whatever. Any of those sorts of events, I don't know why we couldn't invite the board to be there and be part of that, and have the board invite people, so we can all kind of come together. So.
Right. And, and if, you have connections at your church, please reach out to me. That's one thing I really want to reach out to our faith-based community and sit down and talk. And like I said, being a cross follower myself, I'll take criticism from the church all day long, and stuff. And so I really want to do that. So if there's connections that I can make with, some of the leadership of your different churches, please reach out to me, and I would love to sit down with them.
Any other comments, any other questions? Is it time to adjourn?
I think so.
I think so too. So do we have any motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn this meeting.
I second it. All right. Mr. Moore? Any questions? Is that right? Any comments, questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The meeting is adjourned.